Welcome. My name's Harry Chotner. In a minute, I'm going to bring out Natalie Hedren, who was born in a small town in Minnesota, raised there. Mom was a school teacher. Dad had a grocery store. Had a sister who was 4 years older than her. And when she was a little girl, her dad started calling her Tupsa. I think that's right, which is a Swedish sort of diminutive for adorable little girl, and Tupsa became Tippi. When she was 20, she moved to New York to pursue a modeling career, got married, became the mother of a wonderful actress, Melanie Griffith, began to appear in TV commercials, and in 1962, she was in a TV commercial on the Today Show, and Alma Hitchcock, Alfred's wife, was watching it and was immediately struck by her and showed it to Alfred, and the two of them were intrigued, contacted her agent, put her under contract, and her first job was to star in The Birds. She went on to make 38 other films, a whole lot of interesting TV work, and perhaps as important as anything is 30 years ago, she established the Roar Foundation and the Shambhala Animal Preserve, which she will talk about later. It's really fun and a privilege to have Tippi Hedren. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Wow, do we have a full house here? Oh, thank you.
You've got a full house.
Awesome.
In the introduction to the movie, they were talking about costumes, and it was mentioned in passing that Hitchcock liked blondes because of the contrast you could have between the light blonde hair and the dark blood. But Hitchcock's interest in blondes, I think, went beyond that. Madeleine Carroll, Joan Fontaine, Grace Kelly, Eva Marie Saint, Kim Novak, and especially Tippi Hedren. But in your case, it seems as though what had always been an interest, even a kind of obsession with blondes with Hitchcock, took a more complicated, pathological development in sort of scary ways. And so tell me if this is a fair characterization, that when you first started working for him, on the one hand, he was very welcoming, you were participating in meetings, learning about the business. This was her first film. On the other hand, he wanted to control what you wore, what you read, what you ate, what you did. How did that unfold for you?
Not too well. You know, I was not a young woman when I went under contract to him. I was, 31 years old. And I had a daughter who was then 4 years old. So this was a godsend for me to be told that this producer was not only interested in me, but after seeing my photo book of the fashions that I had done in New York, and the reel of about 15 Class A commercials that he wanted me to go under contract to him. It came at a very important time in my life because modeling, if you are a model for 10 years, that's a long time. And I wanted Melanie to have the opportunity of saying, I'm going out to play, Mommy, which you can't do if you're living in New York City. So we packed up Melanie and the nanny and the dog and the kitty and the bunny, and we all moved to Los Angeles. And I rented an expensive home in Westwood, and I thought my career would go on as it had in New York, and it wasn't happening. And so on that Friday, the 13th of October, 1961, when I received that call saying, are you the girl in the Seago commercial? There's a producer who is interested in you. And the outcome of that was, after my own little period of suspense of about 4 days, when I didn't know who that man was or whatever, that I was told that Alfred Hitchcock, if I looked over the contract, read it, understood it, and signed it, we would go over to meet him. And all I could think of was going home and telling Melanie we were going to be okay, you know. And so I signed it, and we went over to meet him. And it was really funny because he opened the door himself, and he stood there, and it was the exact profile that you see on a television show, which, you know, lightened the whole thing. Yeah, it was unique.
And once you began to get into pre-production, they're doing your costumes, you're learning the script, having rehearsals and stuff. Was it uncomfortable? You'd never acted before in any sustained way. In what ways were you made to feel comfortable, and what ways was it not so comfortable?
Basically, you know, when you're doing commercials, it gives you a good technical background. I had no fear of the studio, the filming, any of that. But in no way does it prepare you for. How do you break down a script? How do you discover your character? How do you become that character? I mean, there's so much that involved with acting that I was not educated in those areas. So I was very fortunate in that Alfred Hitchcock became my drama coach, which was awesome because he does know a little bit about it, or did. And those times, and his wife was very helpful as well. Alma was really amazingly helpful with the techniques of acting, and all the things that I learned from him and Alma, I have used forever. It was unique.
You were also working with one of the great American actresses, Jessica Tandy, and I was wondering, did she take you under her wing? Was she supportive? Was she threatened?
Here I was dealing with Jessica Tandy, Rod Taylor, Suzanne Plachette, all of these, talented people who had really proven themselves in the film business. And every one of them treated me as though I was their equal in the business, and I so greatly appreciated that, because it was, I believe they felt that under the tutorage of Alfred Hitchcock that I was getting the right information. And so it was, really easy for me. In fact, I truly believe that Jessica Tandy saved the film. You just saw it, so you will remember the scene where I bring her the tea after she has had this horrible, horrific experience of witnessing the farmer and his horrible death. And she is, obviously upset, and for good reason. And so I bring her this tea, and we have this very serious conversation. When we first did the scene, I was kind of surprised because Hitch came over to me and he said, "I want you to play this in a very bitchy manner." And I went, "All right, he's the boss, right?" And so I did. And I have to tell you, playing bitchy is fun. It's, whether I felt it was right or not, we did it. And when that piece was edited, and they went into the screening room to watch it, Jessica was with him. And at the end of the scene, she turned to him and said, "Nobody's going to like that girl." So, meanwhile, the set has been broken down. It's in storage. We were on to other things, and within a couple of days, that set was back on the stage, and we did it again, and I played it this time in a very compassionate way. And you know what it did for me? It really showed me how the actor can either kill a movie or save it. And it really frightened me with that power. I mean, it was huge for me to realize that. And also just with your manner of acting, how you can form a character or destroy it.
You know, it's interesting you talked about how much Hitchcock was helping you with acting, and in general, Hitchcock is usually defined as the quintessential director who didn't care about acting. He's called actors cattle. The most important part of making a movie is pre-production and post-production.
They should be treated like cattle.
They should be treated like cattle. And so it's interesting to hear you say that he actually was helpful. And how did he work with actors?
He did, and Alma was very, very much a part of this tutoring that I received. And it was all done by really discussion of the characters, of the scene, of the relationships with each of the characters. It wasn't acting lessons, nothing of that kind. In fact, I have a difficult time explaining how he did this, how he brought me to this kind of ability to discover a character and become a character, that character. But I am eternally grateful for that. But he is known as not, and there wasn't much direction when we actually got on the set, because he would talk to each one of the characters, and it would be about the scene, about the character, about the relationship, whatever was most important for that scene, and everybody just got it. You know, it was, there would be a minimal amount of rehearsal on the set, and we'd probably run through it once, and then there would, then there would be the first take, and he didn't make us go over it over and over and over again, which is really a blessing for any actor. For
multiple takes.
Oh, I don't think I could do it. If anybody asked me to do 15 or 20 takes, I have to tell you, I would say, listen, when you figure out what you want, call me back, because I have done several variations a couple of times, and it really it isn't necessary. And I think you find that all of the great directors do minimal numbers of shots, because basically you're going to get the best ones at the very beginning.
Clint Eastwood, for example, is famous for that. 2 takes for him, never more. So there's all this good attention, it's working quickly, but at some point the relationship with him got uncomfortable, yes? With Hitchcock?
Oh, very.
When did you begin to feel that it was going off the rails?
The whole thing of working with him, and it was wonderful working with him. I felt really so fortunate. And then towards the end of The Birds, strange things were happening, like Peggy Robertson would say to me, Hitch would like to have you join him for a glass of champagne after filming today. And I went, why? Because this was my first film, but I don't think, that doesn't sound right to me. And those were the kind of beginning kinds of things. And then it would be, Hitch would like to have lunch with you today. This was at the end of the filming. And it, this was not my first rodeo. And I was 31 years old, and I had a daughter, and I had been a fashion model with some of the best photographers in New York and that sort of thing. So I knew pretty well how to handle those kinds of situations and managed to do it very well. So finally the end of the birds came, but while I was doing the birds, and I remember the scene that had happened, we were up on the dunes, Rod Taylor and I were up on the dunes with a glass of champagne or a martini, whatever it was, and we were talking about my mother and his mother and, all of this kind of soul-searching kind of conversation. And it was while we were doing that scene that I was told that I was going to be playing Marnie, which was stunning to me, probably more than anyone. I'm sure in the business the whole industry was stunned when they heard that I was going to play. Every actress in Hollywood wanted that role. It really was pretty amazing. And but so then the summer came and went, and all of a sudden we were preparing for Marnie, and it all went very, very well until the end of the shooting of Marnie, and that's when it really became really difficult for me. Things were said to me that shouldn't have been said. Constantly the cocktails I was supposed to go to after the shooting day, and I had a daughter, and so I played that card a lot. A lot. But at least I was keeping everything at bay, and I kept wondering, why is he doing this? Why? It's ruining everything, and at one point I was asked to go to New York to be on the Today Show to receive an award from, it was a film magazine. I can't remember the name of it. Doesn't matter. Photoplay. There you go. That was it. And I remember the scene we were doing. I had just tried to drown myself, and Mark Rutland, Sean Connery, brings me out of the water and asks me why I didn't jump overboard. And it was because of me that was even acknowledged. When she jumps into and drowns herself in the pool, I read that and I said, why doesn't she jump overboard if she really wanted to kill herself? That's the way to do it. And so they thought, oh, yes, we better explain that to the audience because they won't understand. And so the question comes from Sean, why didn't you just jump overboard? And I say something very clever, like I didn't want to feed the fish. But that's the scene we were doing. And that's when I went into Hitch's office on the set. And I said, Mr. Hitchcock, I've been invited to go to New York to receive an award on the Today Show. And I would really like to, I looked at the schedule and it doesn't seem like I couldn't go. That it could be arranged that I could accept the award. And he said, no. I said, why? And then he launched into these demands that I would have to do to make that possible. And I said, oh, okay, that's the end of it, Pitch. I'm done. I want to get out of the contract. And he said, well, you can't. You have your daughter. You have to take care of. Your parents are getting older. And I said, the people who love me wouldn't want me to be in a situation in which I'm not happy. I want to get out. When Marnie is over, I am done. I want to get out of the contract. And he said, I'll ruin your career. And he did. He kept me under contract, kept paying me my, get this, $600 a week for almost 2 years. And it was kind of sad because when I got out of the Birds and Barney, as the Hollywood expression goes, I was hot as an actress. But to get to me, they had to go through him. And he said, she's not available. It was so easy. It's easy.
Tell us, there's an amazing story about the scene that we all just saw where you go upstairs to the room. And my understanding is that what happened is that initially they were going to use mechanical birds in that room. But then Hitchcock, who I gather was already beginning to build up this anger, decided they were going to use live birds, and they had bird wranglers standing there literally taking live birds and throwing them at your face.
They did.
Over and over and over again. And you were getting covered with bird droppings and scratched. And can you talk about that?
Yeah, when I first read the script, there were a couple of things that I questioned. One was, first, why do I go up those stairs all by myself? I thought it was a legitimate question. And, you know, because she had seen what's happened in the town, what happened to the farmer, the house that we were in was boarded up so that nothing could get into it. And she goes up the stairs by herself. I said, why does she do that? And he looked at me like, I never thought of that. And he said, because I tell you to. Okay. My paycheck. So I walked up there by myself, and then I said, and when I open that door, how would we be doing that scene where I open the door and all these birds come flying at me? And he said, oh, well, we're going to use the mechanical birds like we do when the children are working. And that was a lie, and everybody lied to me about that scene. The morning we were, it was late in filming, and I was in my little kind of cottage thing they had on the set for me, and the assistant director came in, Jim Brown, the late Jim Brown, and he couldn't look at me. He looked at the floor and the walls and the ceiling, and I said, what's the matter with you, Jim? And he said, the mechanical birds don't work, we have to use real ones. And out the door he sailed. And I picked up my jaw off the floor and went out to the set. There was not a mechanical bird in sight, but there was a cage around the door, and in that cage were cartons this high, filled with gull and raven, a few crows, a few pigeons, and 4 bird trainers with gauntlets up to their shoulders, and they just hurled birds at me for a week. Jessica Tandy came out on the set one day, and she went to Hitch and said, how can you do this to her?
The account of it I read was that at one point, the doctor, there's always usually a doctor on the set, had to intervene and say that they had to stop it, you had to be allowed to rest, that you were, birds attack the eyes, you've been scratched near the eye, and that finally a doctor, and Hitchcock still didn't want to stop, and argued with the doctor, from what I read.
Yeah. Well, actually, that happened on the day that, on the 5th day. And I was so exhausted that and I took care of my daughter that weekend, and I don't remember anything about that weekend. I don't remember driving to the studio Monday morning, and apparently when I got to my gorgeous suite, I laid down on the chaise, and my makeup man couldn't wake me, the hairdresser couldn't wake me. And when I did awaken, I was fully dressed, but in my own bed at my home. And that's when the doctor told Hitchcock that she's got to have, at least a week off. And Hitch said, well, she can't. We have nothing else to shoot but her. And he said to Hitchcock, what are you trying to do, kill her? And he was very serious about it. Scary stuff.
You mentioned Marty, which for a lot of us, it's my favorite film of all the films you've done, especially in terms of your performance. And what was it like working with Sean Connery? Both of you careers were just taking off. What was Connery like?
Oh, he was an absolute delight. Very elegant, very much a gentleman. And I remember when Hitchcock was looking for the Mark Rutland character, and he couldn't find Mark Rutland anywhere in Hollywood. None of the actors were right. And finally one day he came into the office and he said, I have found your Mark Rutland. I said, great, who is it? And he said, Sean Connery. I went, Sean Connery? I said, Mr. Hitchcock, you mean the Sean Connery who just got out of Dr. No, who is right now on a Time magazine cover as the sexiest man in the world? The Sean Connery who could melt the iciest of blondes? I said, Mr. Hitchcock, you know, Marnie is such a frigid woman. She screams every time a man comes near her. Now, how am I supposed to handle that with Sean Connery? And he said, it's called acting. But he also made it very clear to both Rod Taylor and to Sean Connery, you will not touch the girl. They listened.
You know, it's interesting. For your first... And then, in your next film, you were working with Marlon Brando. And Sophia Loren. And you were directed by Charlie Chaplin. So let's start with, what was it like being directed by Charlie Chaplin?
Absolutely delightful. Marlon Brando did not agree with me at all. Hitchcock is so meticulous with his films. His films were finished the day we started filming. In his eye, he saw the whole entire film. And everything was very dignified and well planned. And the delightful thing about Charlie was when he directed, he would get us all on the stage. And there were several scenes where Sophia Loren, Marlon Brando, and I were together, and Sidney Chaplin, his son, Sidney. And he would get us all together, and then he would say, okay, Marlon, you will do this. And there wasn't any verbal discussion of what would happen. Charlie would act it out. Now, can you imagine Marlon Brando accepting that? Here he is, the what do you call that method acting? The method acting. I mean, then this was his life, and why he was so good. I mean, he really had it made with that kind of a technique. And so Marlon was so unhappy, he wanted to quit. And he couldn't get out of the contract, so he had to just grin and bear it. But Charlie would become Sophia Loren's character. He would become Marlon Brando's. He would become, we couldn't do it better than Charlie. It was just awesome. I loved it. I did.
And what about Sophia Loren? What was she like?
Sophia is a delight. She's an absolutely very strong woman, very obviously extremely beautiful, very kind, very has a great sense of humor. She loved Melanie. Melanie and Sophia got along so well. It was really cute. They went out shopping several times and sightseeing, and it was very, very cute. But Sophia is, anytime I run into her, it's a delight. It's wonderful.
You've acted with your daughter before. What was it like, mother and daughter acting together?
Well, I would never ever suggest anything about acting to my daughter, because she is, in fact, somebody was asking me the other day about, do you ever, when you're sitting around with a family, do you ever give each other suggestions or advice about acting? I said, absolutely not. In fact, we never discuss show business. And besides that, we respect each other's talent and would never, ever get to the point of suggesting any kind of advice.
Tell us about how you got into animal conservation, animal protection, and the film that you made in 1981 in which you were all in some serious jeopardy. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, sure. In 1969 and 1970, I did 2 films back-to-back in Africa. One in South Africa and then the other one in Rhodesia, which is, of course, now Zimbabwe. And during those years, there was a great deal of effort by scientists to explain to us, people of the world, that if we didn't do something right then to save the animals in the wild by the year 2000, just because of encroaching civilization, sport hunting, poaching, and hunting, the trophy hunting. And so there was a lot of awareness going out. And my then husband, being a producer, we thought, well, why don't we do a film about the animals in the wild? And we were kicking around ideas. Should we use a group of animals, focus on one animal? What should we do? And that answer came very quickly. We went on a photo safari to Mozambique. And on the Gorongosa Game Preserve, there was a house that had been abandoned by a game warden because it flooded during the rainy seasons. He moved out, and a pride of lion moved in. It grew to be the largest pride in all of Africa. It was a sight that I wish you could see what is in my head with that house. The lions were sitting like great trophies in a window. They were, portraits. They were going in and out the doors. They were napping on the verandas. A couple of them were fighting off in the distance. The cubs were playing out in front. It was just absolutely candy for your eyes. You couldn't get near that house. Well, you could once maybe. But we thought, what a perfect, bingo. We've got it. Perfect movie set. Animals of which most people are either fascinated by, which is wonderful, scared to death of, which is very good, or they may want to tickle their tummies and hug them and take them home as a pet. So anyway, we got back to Los Angeles and the script was written. We were trying to think how many cats were in that house. And we couldn't count them because they were in motion, but we figured there must have been 20, 25 cats living in this house. And so that's the way the script was written. And we were going to have Hollywood acting animals, have a 9-month shoot, over and out. So when the script was written, we handed it to the trainers, the humans, who were in control of these lions and tigers. And they all came back laughing at us, saying, this can't be done. And then we said, why not? They said, because of the numbers of cats you have working together. And we said, well, that's the way it's done in Africa. Smart-ass answer. Anyway, they said, well, there's an instinctive dictate in these animals that they will fight an animal, a big cat they don't know. And it's a genetic instinct, and I will not let my cat work with a cat it doesn't know. I don't want that cat hurt. I don't want to get hurt. Get your own animals to do the movie. Well, that's a romantic notion, isn't it? Yeah. So that's how it all started. Started out with one little lion that we rescued. His name was Casey, and he lived out his life with us. But from then on, we all these different trainers knew that we were needed lions, and in the 80s we had 150 big cats that we had rescued. We became a very important facility to the different state fish and game departments, who would have to confiscate a lion or a tiger because they weren't treated well, they had hurt someone, or for some reason. And the Department of Agriculture was sending us animals, and the SPCA's, the humane societies, and it became a real goal for me, because I was learning so much about them, and the fact that they cannot be a pet, that they, as they have a great capacity for love, they have a sense of humor, they have their inferiority complexes, their dominancy problems, but there's a couple of things that are lacking in these animals, and one is that in their gene pool, they do not have a conscience, and they do not have a remorse gene, and that's what makes it possible for them to do the job that they are born to do out in the wild, which is take out the old animals, the sick animals, the lame animals, and that doesn't matter with your whether you're animal or human, and that doesn't make a good pet. And I have had the experience of being hurt. There were 8 people hurt when we were doing our film. One man, our assistant director, was almost killed. And it's those kinds of things that make you say, there will be no hands-on from now on. And that's the way we have been treating the animals, and to keep us safe and to keep them safe.
And doing it for 30 years, which is...
41.
41 years.
Yeah, I started in 71 and 72, and we became the Sanctuary, the 501c3, in 1983 when I founded the... Yeah, that's what you were thinking of. And you were right, but we actually started a lot earlier than that.
Well, if we can get some house lights, we'll take questions from the audience. If, sir, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, she did. Edith had designed the costume, the green one. Okay,
Let me repeat the question.
Okay.
That's right. Which is that he was asking, when Edith had designed the costumes, did you work with her in any way in the design and development of the costumes?
Edith, I met Edith the same day that I met Alfred Hitchcock. He brought in his whole crew for me to meet, which I thought was wonderful, and I used this word unique in the way it should be meant. I mean, this was a unique situation. Edith and I became very, very fast friends, and but I would never, ever take the liberty of telling her what I thought about the costume, although I did, but I certainly didn't do it with any kind of, oh, I think this should be changed. I would never have done that, because I think the woman was perfect in her decisions, and the more I was able to know her, I realized what a difference it is between a designer who designs for us and to make us look chic and up to date and all of that, and the designer who has to work for not only something that is going to be perfect for the era of the film, and the character of all the different people in the movie, but what is the action that character has to do, and how do I design that particular costume so that action can be completed. I mean, there's so much more to designing for a film than there is for us.
Just imagine a first-time actress is dealing with the woman who, except for Walt Disney, has won more Academy Awards than anybody in the history of the industry. So you probably weren't going to be... Yes. Other questions anybody has? Yes, yes. The question was, I drove all the way here from Cleveland, Ohio to meet you, so after the event, can I have my photograph taken with you? And the answer is...
That's the way to do it. You know, the state of Cleveland has fewer laws than any about owning lions and tigers. It's a huge problem. Ohio is one of the biggest problems. So I'm going to depend on you to do some real work there.
It sounds like no photograph. I'm sorry, guys. Yes, ma'am.
Since birds don't act the way they did in this film, I wonder if you would make this film today, knowing that you love animals.
Oh, I am so glad that every time I've heard any kind of inkling from anybody that, oh, somebody wants to do the birds over again, I cringe. Because with special effects as they are today, it would be horrific. I mean, it would be awful. It would be unbelievable and probably laughable. So I hope they never do another birds. I think this one is perfect. I think it still holds up. I think it's a very frightening film. It's effective. I mean, obviously, you're all here, and this movie has a life of its own. It goes on and on and on. And you know why I think it is? Because everybody says, what happened at the end of the film? What happened? I don't know. I know what I think, but what do you think? And what do you think? And what do you think?
As you might guess, there's been lots written trying to answer the question about why this happens, and it's clearly one of the most unnerving things about the movie is that we're never told. Because usually when we're given an explanation, then there could be some relief. It won't happen again, or we'll know what to do about it. But since there's no explanation, why won't it happen again tomorrow? And I've read a zillion interpretations, but yours is the one I'd most like to hear. Why? When you were making the movie, did you have a thought about why it was happening?
Oh yeah, I think we all have our own thoughts about it.
What was?
You know something? I haven't decided yet, but I would like to share this little story with you. Hitchcock asked all of us to come into his office. We were up in Bodega Bay, and he started telling endings of the movie. And there must have been 4 or 5 different endings that he had. And the only one that I remember, because I think I liked it the best, was that when the family drives off in that gorgeous car, which I love driving, I must say, they go up to the San Francisco Bridge, and it's covered with birds. They show the arches in where are they? The big arches in the middle. What state is that in?
St. Louis.
No. In the Midwest arches. St. Louis. Thank you so much. And then they go to one of the big buildings in Chicago. Everything is covered with birds. The Statue of Liberty is covered with birds. The Eiffel Tower is covered with birds. And all around the world, the different famous edifices covered with birds. I like that one the best. Because that really made a point to me.
That's sick. Yes, other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Ms. Hedren. Thank you for coming out tonight, first of all. You've been involved in a lot of meaningful activities throughout your life, animal rights and film, we've talked about tonight. So what would you value as your most important contribution overall over the course of your life?
I think the work that I'm doing with the animals right now, and trying to get a bill passed to stop the breeding of lions and tigers. It is my goal, and to have this atrocity stopped. These animals are apex predators, top of the food chain, four of the most dangerous animals in the world, and our government looks at them as an industry. And that, to me, is so wrong. These animals are being treated so poorly in most of the parts of the country. And the rulings that our Department of Agriculture and many of the state fish and game departments say that it's all right to keep a lion or a tiger in a cage something like 18 by 22 for the rest of his life. Is that okay with any of you? No. And that's just the beginning of the torture for those animals. And they are serial killers. It is their choice, and as I said before, they have no conscience, and they don't care, and it's true. And this has to stop, and I'm having a tough time with basically mostly the circus, the big circus. Kenneth Feld and the Ringling Brothers. They practically own Washington. And there's a lot of people in Washington who thinks that this is an industry. So if I could get your help and you write to your representatives and your senators, and I have a few brochures here.
Literature. If you come up afterwards, we can give you.
Okay, and if you just look on our website, shambhala.org, and if you would, your voice means so much, but it's only important if you use it. That if you would write to your congressmen and your senators, just stating the fact these animals should not be in the United States. And the bill is titled Big Cats Public Safety Protection Act. It has a number. It was introduced by my own Congressman Buck McKeon on May 17th in the House, and in the Senate in July. It was the first or second week of July by Blumenthal. So we are ready to go on it. It has to go to committee and then to the floor, and then hopefully, please God, this is so wrong that's going on in our United States.
We were supposed to stop in a minute, but I wanted to ask you, he was asking you to look back. Is there a film that you're most proud of?
Marty. Yeah, I really... Marty was not understood when it first came out, and the critics really panned it. And because all those years ago, nobody understood that if something traumatic happens to a young child, and that child forgets about it, doesn't mean that it isn't making an effect on that child for the rest of its life, and how it's going to manifest itself. And that's the story of Marty, and nobody understood it. Today, the same critics, you can read their critique of all those years ago, 1965, I believe it came out. Oh, 64, yeah. Yeah, we're coming up to it, 64. The critique that they give it today, they're calling it Hitchcock's best film. So go see it again. I'm serious, go see it again, because you will look at it differently than you did all those years ago, because we have a better understanding of so many things.
Alfred Hitchcock may have said he was going to destroy your career, but he didn't. It's a stellar career, and it's a life that's been well lived. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.